It was a bright Saturday morning in a quiet American town, the kind where people still waved at strangers and bikers gathered at the local diner for coffee and stories. The smell of bacon and asphalt filled the air, and the rumble of motorcycle engines echoed like thunder down the main street. Inside the diner, Robert, a gray-haired veteran with kind eyes and a weathered smile, sat at his usual corner booth. He wore his faded army jacket, patches dull but proud, and sipped slowly from his chipped mug. Every wrinkle on his face told a story, but he rarely spoke about the war. Instead, he'd just smile and say, "Some things stay on the battlefield." Outside, the parking lot shimmered with rows of chrome bikes, 40 of them. The Iron Eagles, a tight-knit biker club known not for trouble, but for their loyalty. Among them was Michael, their quiet leader, broad-shouldered, calm, and fiercely protective of his people, especially Robert, whom they called Old Man Rob. And then, trouble rolled in. A shiny black car screeched to a halt in front of the diner. Out jumped Chase, a cocky young TikToker with bleached hair, a flashy jacket, and a phone always in his hand. His cameraman followed close behind, filming everything. "Yo, guys. Watch this, we're about to do something crazy," Chase said to his followers, grinning into his phone. The live stream already had hundreds watching. Inside, people turned to look. Michael's eyes narrowed. Robert barely noticed. He was just paying his bill, ready to head out. As Robert stepped through the door, the wind caught his jacket. The embroidered flag on his sleeve fluttered gently, a quiet symbol of everything he'd sacrificed. That's when Chase saw him, and smirked. "Perfect," he whispered to the cameraman. "Old vet, perfect clickbait." Chase strutted toward Robert, camera in his face. "Yo, old man. Nice jacket. That from the thrift store or the history museum?" He laughed loudly. Robert blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" he asked softly, his voice raspy but calm. Chase stepped closer, phone raised high. "Say something patriotic for the camera, Gramps." Robert sighed, trying to walk past. But Chase blocked him. The air grew heavy. Conversations inside the diner stopped. Then, slap. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Robert stumbled back, his glasses sliding off and shattering on the pavement. Gasps filled the street. The phone camera caught it all, the moment a cocky TikToker slapped a decorated veteran. Chase laughed, pointing. "Did you see that? That's gold." But what he didn't see were the bikers. One by one, chairs scraped. Boots hit the pavement. 40 men and women in leather jackets stood up, silent, eyes dark, jaws clenched. The rumble of engines began again, slow and menacing, like a storm building over the mountains. Chase turned, still grinning at his phone. "They're just bikers, bro. Chill." But Michael stepped forward, removing his sunglasses. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, kid." Chase's grin faltered. His camera shook. What are you gonna do?" "It was just a joke." Michael's voice dropped low, calm but dangerous. "You slapped a man who fought for your freedom. You think that's a joke?" The bikers began to circle slowly, engines growling louder. And in that moment, even the wind went silent. Robert picked up his glasses, trembling slightly, but his eyes, they weren't angry, just sad. "Son," he said softly, "you should have just walked away." Chase looked around, 40 bikers, one narrow road, and nowhere to run. Then Michael leaned in, his voice a whisper that froze Chase's blood. "This isn't the internet anymore. What do you think the bikers should do next? Should they teach him a lesson, or make him face something deeper than revenge?" The air hung thick with tension. Engines idled low, growling like beasts waiting for their command. The smell of gasoline mixed with dust and fear. Chase stood frozen, his phone trembling in his hand, still recording, though his live stream viewers had no idea how real things were about to get. Michael's voice cut through the noise, slow and steady. "Turn that camera off." Chase hesitated. "Hey man, it's content, bro. I didn't mean. Turn it off." The final word hit harder than the slap he'd given Robert. Chase swallowed, lowering the phone. His cameraman, a nervous kid named Evan, backed away, whispering, "Dude, let's just go." But it was too late. The circle had closed. Robert stood a few feet away, holding his broken glasses. He looked smaller now, older somehow. The old man rubbed the side of his face, then looked at Michael. "Don't hurt them," he said quietly. "They're just kids who don't know better." Michael's jaw tightened. "With all respect, Rob, they need to learn." Then he turned back to Chase. "You ever been on a bike, TikTok boy?" Chase blinked. "What? No." Michael motioned toward one of the bikes, a black Harley with chrome so polished it reflected the whole street. "You're about to." Chase's confusion deepened. "Wait, are you serious? You're not gonna, like, hurt me or something, right?" Michael didn't answer. He simply handed Chase a helmet. "Put it on." The bikers revved their engines in unison, a deafening roar that made the ground tremble. Every passing second felt like thunder rolling closer. Chase's hands shook as he slid the helmet on. His voice cracked. "Where are we going?" Michael smirked. "For a little ride. You wanted content, didn't you?" Evan tried to step in. "Hey, man, this is crazy." He said he's sorry, okay? "We'll delete the video." A biker named Evelyn, tall and sharp-eyed, crossed her arms. "Sorry doesn't glue dignity back together." That line hit everyone hard. Even Robert looked down, silent. Moments later, Michael swung a leg over his bike. He glanced back at Robert. "You trust me, old friend?" Robert gave a faint nod. "Always." "Good," Michael said, starting the engine. "Because this isn't revenge. It's a reminder." With that, Michael motioned for Chase to hop on behind him. "Hold on tight." Chase hesitated, but the look in Michael's eyes left no room for argument. He climbed on. And then, roar. The pack of 40 bikes took off as one, tires screeching, dust flying. The entire diner shook as they thundered out of the lot and onto the open road. Chase clung to Michael for dear life, his phone forgotten, his cocky grin gone. Wind whipped his hair. The world blurred into streaks of green and gray. His heart pounded faster than the engines. For the first time in his life, he wasn't controlling the moment was controlling him. Mile after mile, they rode in silence. No music. No laughter. Just the endless hum of engines and the haunting echo of his own heartbeat. Finally, they slowed. The road led to a wide open field, tall grass swaying, sunlight spilling across a small wooden memorial. Dozens of flags lined the fence, each one tattered but standing tall. Michael parked, and the others followed suit. Chase stumbled off, legs shaking, trying to catch his breath. "What is this place?" he whispered. Robert's voice came from behind, steady but soft. "It's where we remember the ones who didn't come home." The old man had followed in a truck, standing now beside a weathered sign, "Veterans Memorial Grounds, Never Forgotten." Chase turned slowly, seeing hundreds of names carved into stone. His throat tightened. The silence was heavier here, sacred somehow. Michael took off his gloves, his tone calm again. "You think going viral matters? These people gave their lives so you could make jokes on a phone." Chase's lips trembled. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Then Robert walked over, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Son, I'm not angry, but you need to understand what respect really means." The young man's eyes watered. I didn't know." Robert smiled faintly. "Now you do." Behind them, the bikers stood silent, heads bowed. The rumble of engines had faded, replaced by the gentle whisper of wind through the flags. And for the first time, Chase felt something he hadn't in years, shame. But deep inside, another feeling began to stir, remorse. Michael turned to him one last time. "You wanted followers, kid? Let them follow you to this truth." Chase looked at the memorial again, his voice barely a whisper. "I will." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky gold. A new silence filled the air, not of fear, but of change. Do you think Chase deserves forgiveness for what he did, or should he face more consequences before earning redemption? The next morning, sunlight crept over the town, painting the sky in orange and gold. The diner was quieter than usual. The same spot where the slap had echoed just a day before now felt peaceful. Robert sat at his corner booth again, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. He looked out the window, watching the road shimmer in the early light. The memory of Chase's frightened face lingered in his mind, not with bitterness, but with a quiet hope. Maybe the kid had learned something. Then the door creaked open, and there he was. Chase. No fancy jacket this time. Just a plain gray hoodie, hands shoved deep in his pockets. His hair was messy, his eyes red, like he hadn't slept. He walked in slowly, every step heavy, every eye in the diner following him. Conversations stopped. Forks froze halfway to mouths. The air thickened again, but this time, it wasn't anger, it was anticipation. He stopped at Robert's table. "Sir." His voice cracked. Can I sit?" Robert gestured toward the chair. "Go ahead." Chase sat down, shoulders hunched. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry. Not the fake kind for the camera. The real kind." Robert studied him quietly. "What changed?" Chase swallowed. "Last night, I couldn't stop thinking about that wall. The names. I looked some of them up. One was your best friend, wasn't he?" Robert nodded slowly. "Yeah. Sergeant Paul Henderson. Saved my life twice. Never made it home." Chase lowered his head. "I never thought about what people like you go through. I just thought views and clout were everything. But standing there, at that memorial, I felt small. Like I'd been living in the shallow end of life." Robert smiled faintly. "Most people do, until something shakes them awake." Then Chase pulled out his phone, not to film, but to show Robert a video. "I deleted everything. But I recorded a new one." He pressed play. On the screen, Chase was standing in front of the memorial, voice trembling. "Yesterday, I did something I'm ashamed of. I disrespected a man who served this country. I did it for attention. But today, I want to use that same attention to say something different. Respect isn't trending, but it should be." The video ended with him placing a small American flag beside the memorial stone. Robert looked at him for a long moment, then reached across the table and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Took courage to do that, son." Chase smiled weakly. "It's getting a lot of views, but for the first time, I don't care about the numbers." The diner door opened again. The Iron Eagles walked in, all 40 of them, led by Michael. Boots thudded, leather creaked, and for a second, the tension returned. Chase stood up quickly. "Look, Michael raised a hand. "Relax, kid. We saw the video." The room fell silent again. Then Michael gave a slow nod. "You did good." Chase blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. "You're not mad." Michael smirked. "Oh, we're still mad. But we're also proud. You took a mistake and made it mean something." Evelyn crossed her arms. "Keep doing that, and you'll earn more respect than followers ever could." Chase exhaled shakily, a weight lifting from his chest. "Thank you, all of you." The bikers took a seat, and for the first time, laughter returned to the diner. Coffee cups clinked. Conversations resumed. The world seemed right again. But deep down, Chase knew, his journey wasn't over yet. Something was still missing. And he'd find out what that was soon enough. If you were in Chase's place, would you have faced the people you hurt, or just disappeared and started over somewhere else? 2 weeks later, the small town buzzed with life. Posters hung across shop windows and lampposts, Veterans Memorial Charity Ride, in honor of the fallen. The organizer? Chase Miller. The same kid who had once slapped a veteran was now raising funds for the very community he'd disrespected. His viral apology had drawn attention across the country. Veterans, bikers, and strangers alike messaged him, thanking him for owning up and spreading awareness. But Chase didn't do it for attention this time. He did it because something had changed inside him. That morning, the roar of engines returned to the diner's parking lot. This time louder, prouder, but filled with unity instead of anger. The Iron Eagles lined up their bikes, flags fluttering in the breeze. Michael stood at the front, adjusting his gloves. "Didn't think I'd see the day you'd be leading one of our rides, TikTok boy." Chase grinned sheepishly. "Guess people can change, huh?" Robert chuckled, his voice soft but warm. "That's what life's for, learning before it's too late." The townsfolk gathered to watch. Kids waved miniature flags. Cameras flashed, not for drama this time, but for something real. Chase climbed onto a bike that Michael had loaned him, a matte black cruiser with the words, "Ride with Respect," painted across the tank. He took a deep breath as the engines began to roar. The same vibration that once terrified him now filled him with purpose. As they rode out, the line of bikes stretched for miles, a river of chrome and leather, thunder rolling across the highway. Chase led the group beside Robert, who rode with a peaceful smile beneath his helmet. Halfway through the ride, they stopped at the memorial again. Chase dismounted, holding a small bouquet of white flowers. He knelt beside the wall, placing them beneath Sergeant Paul Henderson's name. The wind whispered softly through the flags. Michael stood behind him. "He'd be proud, Rob." Robert nodded. "So would I." Chase looked up, eyes glistening. "I think I finally get it. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn." Robert smiled. "And you just did." The crowd applauded quietly. Reporters took photos, but for once, Chase didn't pose. He just stood there, hand over his heart, head bowed in silence. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he opened his phone to see millions of comments flooding his latest post. But one stood out. "My dad was a veteran. He would have forgiven you too. Thank you for showing people that change is possible." Chase smiled, closing his phone. The screen went dark, but inside, he felt lighter than ever. The engines started again, echoing down the long stretch of road. The Iron Eagles rode side by side into the sunset, flags waving behind them like wings. Robert glanced over and said, just loud enough for Chase to hear, "Not bad for a kid who started a war with a slap." Chase laughed. "Guess some wars end with peace." The bikes roared louder, carrying them toward the fading light, not just as strangers, but as brothers. Do you believe people like Chase, who make a terrible mistake publicly, deserve second chances if they truly change? The next year came quietly. Seasons passed. The town grew a little older, but something about it felt lighter, like peace had settled into its bones. The annual Veterans Memorial Ride had become a tradition now. People came from all over, hundreds of bikers roaring down that same stretch of highway, flags waving, engines howling like thunder under a golden sky. And at the heart of it all was Chase Miller, the young man who had once been hated, now leading the ride with steady hands and a quiet purpose. His hoodie had been replaced with a worn leather jacket that bore a single embroidered patch, "Respect Earned." As he stood near his bike that morning, tightening his gloves, a soft voice behind him said, "You look like a real rider now." Chase turned to see Robert, older but still sharp, walking toward him with a cane in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. His smile was tired, but proud. "Morning, sir," Chase said warmly. "You ready for the big day?" Robert chuckled. "Always am. Just don't expect me to keep up with you young ones anymore." Chase grinned. "You're the reason we ride, old man. You'll always lead in spirit." Robert nodded slowly, looking at the horizon. "Funny, isn't it? How a single bad moment can lead to something good, if you let it." Chase's eyes softened. "Yeah, I still think about that day. Every time I hear the engines start." Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then you'll never forget the lesson." Before Chase could answer, the sound of 40 bikes rumbled behind them. Michael and Evelyn walked over, helmets in hand. Michael gave Chase a firm pat on the back. "You did good, kid. Real good. This ride's bigger than us now." Chase looked around, families waving flags, kids wearing "Thank a Veteran" shirts, and rows of riders lined up shoulder to shoulder. He swallowed hard. We made something that matters. The engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath their boots. Chase turned to Robert one last time. "You sure you don't want to ride with us?" Robert smiled faintly, eyes twinkling. "I think I'll watch from here today. Someone's gotta wave you off." Chase nodded, slipping his helmet on. "Then this one's for you, sir." He started his engine, the same black cruiser, its chrome gleaming in the sunlight. The other bikers followed suit, the sound rolling across the town like thunder announcing a storm. Robert stepped back, hand raised in salute. The line of bikes began to move, slow at first, then faster, their engines roaring in perfect rhythm. Dust rose behind them as they disappeared down the long, open road. For a while, Robert just stood there, smiling faintly, wind tugging at his jacket. Then, quietly, he whispered, "Ride safe, son." A few hours later, the riders returned, tired but proud. Chase parked his bike and immediately looked for Robert. But when he entered the diner, the seat by the window, Robert's seat, was empty. Michael walked in behind him, holding his helmet under his arm. His voice was low. "He went home, kid. Peacefully. Just like he wanted to." Chase froze. "Wait, what do you mean?" Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "Heart gave out. Happened while we were on the road." The old man was smiling when he went. Silence fell heavy. The diner lights flickered softly. Chase sank into Robert's empty chair, eyes burning. He looked at the untouched coffee mug still sitting on the table, half full, just the way Robert always left it. Evelyn approached quietly, setting down a small envelope in front of him. "He left this for you." Chase's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single folded note, written in shaky handwriting. "Chase, the world will always have loud people who don't understand respect. But it also needs people brave enough to learn it and teach it forward. You did both. Don't stop riding. Don't stop changing hearts. Your friend, Robert." A tear slid down Chase's cheek. He folded the letter gently, tucking it into his jacket pocket. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, Chase rode out alone to the memorial field. He parked beside the same wall where his journey had changed forever. He took off his helmet, wind ruffling his hair, and whispered, "Thank you, for not giving up on me." He placed Robert's worn dog tag on the stone beside Sergeant Henderson's name. 2 brothers in arms, side by side at last. Then Chase started his engine one more time. The roar echoed into the twilight, bouncing off the hills. He didn't ride for views anymore. He didn't ride for fame. He rode for respect. For forgiveness. For Robert. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, one could almost hear a faint whisper carried on the wind, Robert's voice, calm and proud. "Good job, kid. Keep riding." The road stretched endlessly before him, glowing under the fading light. And for the first time in a long time, Chase smiled, not as a TikToker, not as a kid seeking validation, but as a man who had finally found his purpose. Can one act of forgiveness truly change a person's life forever? Or does redemption always come with a road we must keep riding?